Hey church, Happy New Year. I hope that you and your family had an amazing Christmas. And man, Christmas at Lifepointe was incredible. If you got to experience it with us, you know just how much fun it really was. Getting to experience the Christmas story like never before. If you missed it, of course, you can go back and check that out on our channel. But Happy New Year, and I hope that you're ready for 2023 because I know that God has some cool stuff in store for you. And if you're wondering right now why you're not at the building, or better yet, why the building behind me is empty, obviously today we are all hanging out at home, enjoying some time with family and checking out church online. But just so you're aware, next Sunday we are back to normal. We're right here on campus, and it's going to be a lot of fun because we're starting a new teaching series called Hurry, Rush, Repeat. And I'm believing this is going to be one of the coolest series we've done in a really long time. And I think it's going to be really helpful and refreshing for all of us. So invite somebody to join you, and we'll see you right here next Sunday for that new series, Hurry, Rush, Repeat. But just so you know, we've been celebrating it. Maybe you've already heard, but we've had our minds blown by how good God is through your generosity, because above and beyond, y'all, our goal was $350,000. At the time that I'm filming this video, there has been over $670,000 committed to be given, and so much of that has already poured in. So to every single one of you who has given towards above and beyond end of year giving, thank you so much. And if you're interested in doing that, it's not too late. That's going to be an option to give towards the end of year giving throughout this month. And so you can specify that when you go to give online. And my goodness, just thank you so much to all of you who give to Lifepointe regularly. Your generosity really does make everything that we do possible. So thank you so much. And again, we're just still mind blown by above and beyond. And hey, again, I hope that you guys had a fantastic Christmas, and I hope you're looking forward to this year. Today, you're going to get to check out one of our most popular sermons from this past year. It came from our Toxic series, and I'm believing that if you're watching today, God has you watching for a reason, and I'm believing this is going to be applicable and helpful for you. So Happy New Year's, guys. We'll see you right here next Sunday for Hurry, Rush, Repeat. We love you so much, and enjoy the message.
So I want to start off with a question that I'm pretty sure I know the answer to, but let me just kind of get an idea of who's in the room. Online, you can participate as well. How many of you would say that right now you're having to deal with a difficult person? You have a difficult relationship? Come on, put it up high. Let's go, put the emoji hand. Okay. Anybody sitting next to their don't raise your hand. Just blink twice. Just blink. I see you. Anybody need a seat change? We can do that. Yeah, and if you're sitting there or you're online and you're going, you know what? I don't actually have any difficult people in my life. It's probably because you're the difficult one. So there you go. You just had to come to church to hear somebody that you don't know tell you that. No, the reality is I think dealing with difficult people, it's a part of life, isn't it? And that's why today we're going to start this 4-part collection of talks that I'm just titling Toxic, all about managing dealing with difficult people. And if you come to Lifepointe for any extended period of time, then you know that one of my passions, we give you a regular dose on how to live in and operate around healthy, gospel, Jesus-centered relationships. So I'm going to talk a lot about marriage and dating and singleness and sex. But this Toxic is not about romantic relationships, but rather platonic. Friendships, coworkers, neighbors, and even the hardest one, family members. How do we deal with these kinds of people in a way that doesn't drain me? I don't want your dysfunction to become a drain onto me. And the reason why I'm so passionate about teaching on this is because I just really believe that you can't live right if you get relationships wrong. Did y'all hear what I just said? Like, you cannot live right if you get relationships wrong. I don't care how much you love Jesus. If you go to all 3 services next Sunday and you serve and you give and you help out people who need help, at the end of the day, if you keep getting relationships wrong, you'll never live right. And it's just hard today in this culture to really like dodge or deal with difficult people. Like for today in our culture with the internet and cell phones, dealing with difficult people, it's different. This is why one of these moments where I wish I could go like back in time to when I grew up. I'm gonna do that just for a second. Like anybody a product of the 80s, 90s, come on, 70s, where you at in the house? Yeah. It was just easier to deal with difficult people back in the day before all this technology. Because if you didn't want to deal with somebody in the day, all you had to do was this right here. Come on, how many of you remember this? It's like, I had enough of you today. I'm just off the hook. And all they would hear is, I got vivid memories of my mom. I'd come down the steps and she had one of those 50-foot extension phone cords that she got at Kmart. And the phone would be mounted to the wall in the kitchen, but it'd be 3 rooms over. And I'd be like, Mama, what are you doing? She's like, I'm not dealing with nobody's drama today. It's just easier. You can't get away with that today, can you? Because everybody knows that you got your cell phone on you at all times. You got your Apple Watch. You got people in your life who will text you for not texting them back. And they're like, I can see that you not only got my text, but you read it because you did not enable that setting on your phone that tells people that they didn't see that your phone. You know what I'm talking about right now, don't you? They're like, I know you saw my DM. I know you're on social media because you liked their post. And the other night when I called you, I know you put me straight to voicemail because it rang 3 times. So when you get this message, call me back. I didn't get that. Y'all feel that? Yeah. See, when I was saying that, somebody came to mind. That's exactly who I'm talking about. It's different today on how do we deal with difficult people. That there are people in your life that I call EGR kind of people. Y'all know what this means? Extra grace required. Some of y'all need to write that. You're like, I haven't taken a note in church in a decade. I like that. Extra grace required. So I want to spend the next 4 weeks really elevating what I would like to call our relational IQ. I know that you know that IQ, it's your intelligence quotient. It is somebody's ability to, it measures your reasoning ability. And I think it's great that you have a high intellectual IQ, but how's your relational intelligence? Something we often don't think about. Matter of fact, this is gonna be one of the foundational statements out of the entire series as we really try to elevate our relational IQ. Here's how I wanna define it like this. Relational IQ is knowing in a relationship when to stay and when to walk away. Now, I'm about to mess up some of your vacation Bible school understanding of Jesus, but in preparation for this series, I researched and realized that there were at least 23 different times when Jesus either walked away from people, allowed people to walk away from him. There was even one time where he told his disciples, I'm about to send you out in groups of 2 and you're gonna go into villages. And if people reject you, shake the dust off your feet, which is equivalent of I wash my hands of you and leave. Y'all, Jesus walked away from large crowds of people. He walked away from sick people that he did not heal. He walked away from a rich young ruler who wanted to follow him. And Jesus said, no, you're not ready to follow me. He even allowed Peter and Judas to betray and walk away from him. Well, what is Jesus trying to teach us here? I think it's that we are called to love everybody. That's not up for debate. We're good? We're called to love everybody. The problem in our English vernacular is that other people that speak different languages often refer to English as grammar poor, or it's a poor word language, meaning we often have one word in our English language that we need to use for multiple things. You know this, love is one of them. That's why today, after church, because you're a good Southern godly person, you're gonna go and eat Mexican somewhere and you're gonna get queso dip. I love queso dip, y'all. I talk about queso dip on this stage as much as I talk about my kids. I love queso. White queso, love it. Yellow queso, love it. Queso jalapeno, chorizo, volcano queso. I love any melted cheese. Am I the only one? Okay. Now tonight, before the sun goes down, I'm gonna tuck my kids into bed. If you have kids, you'll do this, or maybe a spouse. And I'm gonna look at my child and I'm gonna say, baby, I love you. Like what, like melted cheese love? Like what, wait a minute. How do you love me? We only got one word. This is what I love about the Greek. The Greek is rich in its vocabulary. Matter of fact, there are 3 different Greek words that describe our love word. So you have agape love. This is God love for humanity, love without condition, God love. Then you got phileo love. Everybody say phileo. That's friendship love. And then you have eros. Look at your spouse and say, or dating, I love you, eros, love. That's romantic, passion, love. So when I say that Jesus commands us to love everybody, this is that agape God love. That our greatest job as followers of Jesus is to reflect the same love and grace that was undeserved to people who don't deserve it. But that does not mean that you need to be phileo with everybody. I don't need to be your friend. It certainly doesn't mean you got to give eros love to people. And so what I'm trying to get us to start realizing as we begin this conversation around toxic people is that just because they know you doesn't mean they should have access to you. Like you should give love freely, but you should give access carefully. Just because you work on the same hall that I do, just because you're my next door neighbor, just because we share the same last name, and we see each other at family events does not give you access to my emotions. It doesn't give you access to my bank account. Hello. It doesn't give you access to my feelings all the time. That just because you know me doesn't give you access to me. Who am I preaching to today? Somebody wave at me if you know somebody. It's like, yeah, I got to cut you off because this is draining me. And so I think over these next couple of weeks, we need to just raise our level of IQ because Jesus walked away from people. And it was simply because not everybody is ready. I think it's so profound that Jesus, the Son of God, the Redeemer of the world, never imposed his will onto other people. So what Jesus is showing us just by this pure demonstration is that sometimes leaving is loving. And that's really hard when that's a close relationship. But sometimes the best thing you can do is actually leave. And that's the most loving because there are certain things that people can only get from God. And maybe in your enablement, even though it comes from a good place, is blocking God's involvement in their life. So they're not turning to God, they're turning to you, which means you're not actually helping, you're hurting. I'm preaching good already on a Sunday. And so I don't know if you need this, but I need this. That as I follow the Lord, as I follow Jesus, how do we begin to set these healthy boundaries? So today, what my goal is, I want to lay a wide foundation. And then over the next several weeks, I'm gonna go deeper on some of these specific toxic traits that you might be seeing in yourself or you might be seeing in other people. So let me just kind of give you a preview of where we're going so you can determine whether or not it's worth your time coming back. Next Sunday, I wanna talk about overly needy people. Okay, yep, you already know what I'm talking about. Like it seems like that person, the more you help them, the more the need really grows. And then the next Sunday, I'm gonna talk about manipulative people. People who are trying to control you, they will use flattery, they will use guilt, they will use shame, ultimately to impose their will onto you. How do we love manipulative people? And then we're gonna close it out. We're gonna talk about critical people. And how do we know the difference between criticism, that's good, and someone who's critical, which is bad? But today, if you take notes, and I encourage you to write some things down or get your phone out, take some pictures of the screen to maybe jog your memory throughout the week. I want to just cast this big net. I want to talk about the fact that we need to throw toxic out. Throwing toxic out. What I love about the Bible is that it really is packed with so much wisdom on how to live and have healthy relationships. So I'm going to go to Galatians chapter 6, verse 1. You're more than welcome to join me there. We'll be in a couple different places today. But I think before we look outward, we need to look inward, and we just need to do an evaluation today, if you're online, of the relationships, the people that we've allowed to get into our circle. So the Apostle Paul, you've heard me refer to him many times if you come to Lifepointe. He's really responsible for writing about a third of what we call our New Testament. And most of the Pauline epistles are letters that he wrote back to churches that he had helped plant, or he at least heavily influenced the leadership structure. Here's the beauty. Most of the letters that he wrote were confronting dysfunction inside of these churches. So Paul's like, man, I haven't even been gone for like 5 years and you guys are already fighting, you're already messing stuff up. And there is so much relational disorganization that Paul begins to kind of set the table straight. And right here in Galatians chapter 6, we're gonna see really the root of where toxic behavior comes from. So here's what Paul says, Galatians chapter 6, starting in verse 1. If you're ready, shout, I'm ready. Okay, here we go. He says this, brothers and sisters. Now let's pause already. He's not talking about biological family members. No, this is if you're a follower of Jesus, you're considered in the brotherhood, brothers and sisters in Christ. Here's what this means. If you don't follow Jesus, you don't have to do anything I say today. You get to audit this class. You can just sit back and lean out and just kind of listen to what we're gonna talk about today. But if you are a follower of Jesus, this is for us. He says, if someone is caught in a sin, you who live by the Spirit should restore that person gently. I love this. This is a lost practice today. Paul says if you have a relationship with somebody and you love Jesus and they love Jesus, it is actually loving to call out that thing that they keep going back to that Jesus has set them free from. One of the most caring things you can do is confront people when they're settling for less than God's best. That's called sin. But then he gives this word. He says, but watch yourselves, or you also may be tempted. This is a warning. Paul's like, look, as you begin to get into the lives of other people, you need to watch out because what's in them can get into you. That's when it becomes toxic. It's what's their dysfunction is now causing a reaction inside of you. So he says, you gotta be careful because their greed can get into you. Their selfishness can get into you. Their anger can get into you. Their addictions can get into you. So he goes on, he says this, verse 2, carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. If anyone thinks they are something when they are not, they deceive themselves. Each one should test their own actions. Then they can take pride in themselves alone. Paul is dropping gold. He says, without comparing themselves to someone else. Verse 5, for each one should carry their own load. This is interesting. This is one of these sections of scripture that I call a conundrum. Because in one part of the text, verse 2, Paul says, carry each other's burdens. Did y'all read that? You saw that, right? Okay, just making sure we got the same Bible going on here. So carry each other's burdens. But then at the end of verse 5, he says that each one should carry their own load. Which one is it? Am I to help one another and carry other people's burdens, or am I responsible to carry my own load? And the answer is yes. Yeah, but it's both. I love this illustration, that there are certain things in life that God has designed to be a backpack and other things as boulders. So backpack represents your load. These are things that God has designed to develop you that you're responsible to carry. Are you with me? Okay, and then there are things in life that are boulders. In honor of the CrossFit Games, y'all watch that? 300-pound sandbag cleans. That you're not like, don't worry, this is only 30 pounds. You're not designed and equipped to carry this on your own. That there are certain things that you're gonna go through in life that if you try to carry the weight, it's gonna crush you. In other words, you can't do life alone, you need people. Now, wisdom is discerning the difference between the two. Is this backpack, is this my load, or is this a burden that I can't carry on my own? And I love this because the backpacks are things in life that God will use to balance you, to help strengthen you. Like there are just certain things in this life that you're responsible to develop. Only you can. Nobody can develop your relationship with Jesus but you. You got to develop that. Your granny can't do that for you. Your mom, I'm glad she was a praying woman. You can't get into heaven on the coattails of your parent. They're only first generation sons and daughters in heaven. God doesn't have grandkids. You're like, I need to think about that one. No, you got to develop. It's not even the church's responsibility to develop your faith. You got to do that. That's on you. Everyone say, that's on me. That's on me. If you want to be a great spouse to the person you committed to marry, you got to develop that. If you want to be that parent that your kids want to be in a relationship with when they leave the house, you got to develop that. Nobody can give you drive. Nobody can give you a good work ethic. Those are things that you have to develop. They're backpacks. It's things that God will use to stabilize you, because if it wasn't for the backpack, I would run crazy and I would burn out my life, but God uses it as a balance. God will even use trials and obstacles as backpacks to grow you and mature your faith. Maybe you have a testimony, like many of us in this room, where you would say, you know what? I didn't find the power of God sitting in a church pew. I found the power of God face down on a bathroom floor, pounding the ground, begging God to show up and heal my loved one. It was on that cold bathroom floor where the presence of God was made known, and I asked God to deliver me from what I was going through, and he showed up, and I got his peace, and he got me through it, and now that I'm on the other side of it, I can see his goodness, and I can see his faithfulness, that what the enemy used to try to destroy me, God was actually using to grow me. So I don't need you to tell me that God's a provider. I wear his provision on my back. I don't need you to tell me that God's strong. strong. I got his provision on my back. I got his goodness. Who's this for? His mercy, his faithfulness. It follows me wherever I go. I wear it with me. Whew. It's a backpack, and it's your load. It's my load to carry. Paul calls these loads. That there are just certain things that I can't put on other people because God wants me to develop it myself. But then you got these boulders. And this is the part of life that if you try to carry this on your own, it'll crush you. You can't go through divorce by yourself. It's gonna crush you. You can't go through addiction by yourself. You need people to surround you. You can't try to figure everything out and go through loss and tragedy on your own. That there are certain things in life that God will design to be a boulder and other things to be a backpack. Now, I'm telling you this because the root of toxic behavior is always in a person who is unwilling to carry their own load. Want me to run that back? The root of toxic behavior is always found in someone who is unwilling to carry their own load. And because they're unwilling to carry what God's trying to develop in them, they begin to turn and hand that over to you. That there are things in life that God will use to develop us. This is where their chaos begins to get into your own heart. Relational chaos is often the result of somebody's unwillingness to carry what God is trying to develop in them. And I want to show you this. I want to show you maybe through scripture how a lot of you feel. Now that we've kind of identified a little bit about where toxic behavior comes from. And I'm going to take you to the Old Testament today. I think this is worth the trip. We're going to go to the Old Testament book of Jonah. More than welcome to join me there. If not, we'll put it up on the screen. But the life of Jonah is a really interesting story. And we're just going to do a little bit of a Bible study today through a few verses here that I think is going to really show us what happens when someone else's chaos gets into the boat of your life. So Jonah was a prophet. If you're unfamiliar with that, a prophet was basically God's Uber message delivery system back in the day. This was not a sexy job. Often God was giving the prophets messages to deliver to other kings and nations that were very wicked. It was a very high-risk job. And so look at Jonah chapter 1. Here's what it says. It says, the word of the Lord came to Jonah, son of Amittai. He says, go to the great city of Nineveh and preach against it, because its wickedness has come up before me. But Jonah ran away from the Lord and headed for Tarshish. And he went down to Joppa, where he found a ship bound for that port. And after paying the fare, he went aboard and sailed for Tarshish to flee from the Lord. All right, so God gives Jonah an assignment, and he tells Jonah, I need you to go down to the city of Nineveh. Nineveh was a very prominent, powerful city back in ancient times. The problem was that it was very wicked. Polytheistic, they worshiped many gods, and they actually made fun of and opposed the God of Israel, the God of Yahweh, the one true God. The other side of the Ninevites is that they were violent. They were known for their brutality, and they murdered people who opposed their ways. I was reading one scholar, I'd never known this before, that has a lot of reason to believe that at least 2 of Jonah's brothers were murdered by the Ninevites. It's no wonder Jonah didn't want to go. You wouldn't want to go. Number one, I don't want to save these people. I know God's grace is so good, it's actually going to save them. They should go to, okay, yeah, you can say it, that other place. And not to mention, I don't want to die on this death mission. If they killed my brothers, if that's actually true, then what's to say that they won't take my life? Jonah didn't want to go. So you know what he did? He went down to the seaport. He bought a one-way Carnival cruise ticket, and he's sailing for Joppa, which is in the complete opposite direction. And Jonah, listen, Jonah's doing what we do. This is not what we do when God puts something on our hearts that we don't want to do. Or something on our hearts that's very difficult, like I don't want to forgive that person. I don't want to be in a relationship with, I don't want to confront them. What do? We run. I'm convinced that every toxic tendency that's coming out of people, it's because people are running from something. And there are people in your life who would love to get into the ship of your boat. I love that the word is called relationships. Because like a ship, it's taking you somewhere. And if you don't know where you're going in life, people will gladly take you where they're heading. Yeah, if you don't have a call and direction and vision for your life, there will be people who will get in your boat and they will be glad to take you in the direction that they're heading. See, I don't feel bad for Jonah at all. Jonah knows what he's doing, right? He knows he's running from the Lord. He knows he's fleeing. He knows he's being disobedient. You know who I feel bad for? I feel bad for the sailors that he's about to get into the boat with. See, I've taught this story many times, but I've never actually taught it through the lens of the sailors. When you look at this text through the lens of the sailors, it actually takes on an entirely different meaning. So look what happens because Jonah is running. He gets into their boat, verse 4. It says, then the Lord sent a great wind on the sea, and such a violent storm arose, and the ship threatened to break up. You know what this means? It means you can't outrun God. How many of y'all know you can change proximity, you can change jobs, you can change marriages, you can change credit cards, but you cannot outrun your dysfunction. I know I'm preaching good when it's really quiet in here. You can't outrun it. So God shows up in the form of winds and waves. He's going to do a course correction on Jonah's life. He will do a course correction on your life at some point. But look at the sailors. All the sailors were afraid, and each cried out to their own God, and they threw cargo into the sea to lighten the ship. So just imagine this, okay? These sailors are terrified of this storm. So their first thought is, we got to lighten this boat. And so they're grabbing cargo and they're throwing stuff overseas. Watch what Jonah is doing and tell me if this is not indicative of difficult people of what they're doing when you're struggling. Watch this. But Jonah had gone below the deck where he lay down and fell asleep. Homeboy's dreaming and they're up on the deck freaking out. The captain went down to him and he said, how can you sleep? Get up, call on your God. Maybe he will take notice of us so that we will not perish. Are y'all reading this? So these sailors, mind you, they're innocent. They don't know what's going on with Jonah. They're on top of the deck trying to lighten the load while Jonah is fast asleep in the bottom. And if one thing that I know about difficult people is that while you're dealing with their baggage, they are sleeping in the stern of your life. So you're trying to throw out cargo. And you're getting frustrated. Why isn't this cargo working? But it's not a cargo issue, it's a character issue. You can throw cargo out all day long and you can do all that you can to help them and you can even give up some of yourself for them. But if it's a character issue, you can't solve character, only God can. This was something beyond what they could do. And so Jonah finally has enough of this and he says, guys, it's me. I'm the problem. I appreciate all that you're doing, throwing this precious cargo, but I'm the one who's on the run. And watch what Jonah tells them to do. He gives them the play-by-play. Here's what you need to do. Look at verse 12. He goes, guys, pick me up. Throw me into the sea, he replied, and it will be calm. I know that it is my fault that this great storm has come upon you. Look at verse 13. Instead, everyone say instead. This was the word in my study that really elevated off the page, underline that, circle that, instead. Think about this. Jonah told them exactly what they needed to do. He told them exactly what the problem was, it's me. And instead, you're about to see here in a moment, they rowed back to shore. How many times do we do this? You can see right through the game they're playing. You can see the manipulation. You can see that they're trying to bring you into the drama and you know what you should do, but instead you give them one more chance. Instead, you open up your wallet one more time and instead you allow them to make you feel guilty. Instead, you allow them to bring you down. You know what to do, but instead you row. He's running, they're rowing. So look at the text. He says, here's what you should do. Look at the end of it though. But they could not. For the very end of it, look what it says here. It says, instead the men did their best to row back to land. Instead, they rowed. But they could not, for the sea grew even wilder than before. You tried to help them, but their manipulation just grew wilder. You tried to row for them, but their anger just grew wilder. You try to step up and give them advice, but their disobedience just grew even wilder. You know why? Because you and I were not made for this kind of rowing. You can't outrow their run. And eventually, whatever surrounds you will get in you. Whatever surrounds your life, whatever people you surround yourself with are eventually going to get in you. Now, you know this because you were a teenager at one point. And you know the power of influence, don't you? Some of y'all went through some phases. Some of you got kids right now. They got mullets and listening to country music. And you're like, what are you doing? But then you look at their friends and you're like, oh, okay, I see it now. Why? Whatever you surround yourself with gets into you. I feel like there's some stories in the room. So when I was in high school, all right, when I was in high school, I started hanging out with this certain group, and I went through this like 90s rock, grunge, Nirvana, Pearl Jam phase. So for I don't know, maybe 6-7 months, man, I grew my hair out long. I didn't shower. I wore big baggy clothes. I had piercings on my body. I bought Vans shoes and a skateboard. And so I was emo. I thought it was cool to be emo. Like, nobody gets me. Nobody understands me and my friends. It's us versus everybody else. Mom and dad don't care. I thought it was cool to be down and depressed. That's the kids I hung out with. So my parents did something. This was a pro-parenting move. You know what they did? They sat me down. They said, hey, we've kind of noticed since you've been hanging out with those kids that you're acting really different. So guess what? You're not going to hang out with those kids. I know, this is a shock. This is back when parents parented. That's a low blow. I know, that's a misuse. That's okay. All right, see the older generation? Preach it. Preach that gospel truth. Okay, I'm with you. I struggle with. So they're like, you're not gonna hang out with those kids. And after 2 weeks of me not hanging out with those kids, you know what I realized? I don't like that stuff. I'm not even allowed to listen to half of the bands of the t-shirts that I wore. And I value hygiene. Look at me, I value hygiene. And I can't skateboard. I was a poser. But it was who I hung out with. You see this? Whatever you surround yourself with will eventually get in you. This is why this fall I want you to get in a life group. You gotta get into one of these groups, and we call them life groups because that's where we really do life together beyond just the Sunday morning context. Or small groups of adults that meet all around the greater Charlotte, Rock Hill area. And it's people who are like-minded, who love Jesus, who are just trying to do life together. Get in a group. I'm not saying a Jonah won't slide in, but maybe all of you throw that Jonah out. I don't know, but I want you to surround yourself with the right kind of people who are heading in the same direction. Do you see this? Is this helping? Because if you don't, you're going to head in the direction that they're going. They're rowing, Jonah's running. They're rowing, Jonah's running. And maybe you feel that right now, like you've done everything and you're not getting anywhere. So as we kind of close this first portion today, and we're evaluating our boat and who we have allowed into it, I couldn't help but really think about this question. Why in the world did these sailors not throw Jonah overboard? Right? He clearly told them, guys, I'm the problem. If you do this, the storm will grow calm. Why did they not throw him over? And then I realized that I think it's because these sailors believed what every enabler believes. And that's this right here. Without me, they'll drown. Maybe that's what you've told yourself. I can't throw Jonah out. Because without me, they're going to drown. Hey, listen, church, I'm there on the edge with you because it's really hard to throw Jonah overboard when Jonah is your own child and they're an adult child and they're making bad decisions and they keep coming back to mom and dad looking for a handout, wanting a bailout. It's really hard to cut Jonah off and set up boundaries when you know that if you do that, you're throwing them into the sea. It's hard, that's your baby. It's hard to throw Jonah out when that's your sister. And you're just watching them make choices that are just bringing their quality of life down. And now what they're going through is now weighing on you. It's hard, isn't it? It's hard to throw Jonah out. And we've convinced ourselves, without me, they're going to drown. Hey, I've been there. I've been a professional enabler before. I believe this lie. Without me, they're going to relapse. Without me, they're gonna drink again. Without me, they're gonna hurt themselves. Without me, they're gonna go back into a deeper depression. So here's what I'll do. I'll give into their demands. I'll lend a little bit more money. I'll go to a meeting. I'll write up a speech. Because after all, they're gonna see this exemption of kindness and mercy, and that's gonna make them change. I can do it. Only to realize that I was the focus. I couldn't outrow their run. And I believed the lie that without me, they're gonna drown. And there's something that every person has to get to a place. It's a place of surrender on their own. See, Jonah was not a bad person. He was a man of God. He was a prophet. These people that I'm talking about that are difficult in your life, they're not bad people. That's identity. I don't believe that anybody is too far from the reach of God's grace. I don't believe that there is any addiction or stronghold that is so tight that God's love and mercy cannot release them from it. That's what I'm not talking about. But you know what Jonah did? He had a moment where he admitted, guys, this is on me. And until they admit it, there's nothing you can do. You'll just keep rowing. So finally, they built up the courage. Look at this last verse. It says this, then they took Jonah and they threw him overboard, and the raging sea grew what? It grew calm. You could say in a lot of ways, when they threw toxic out, the boat got calm. If you know the rest of the story, Jonah would go on and share the message that God had given him with the Ninevites, and a great revival broke out. Thousands of people got saved. People turned back to God, but nothing was going to change until they threw him out. And I know this sounds like really aggressive, like throwing people out, but maybe Jonah's not a person. Maybe Jonah's a situation. Maybe Jonah's bitterness. Maybe it's hurt from your past. And I'm not asking you, or is Jesus implying that you give up on people? I'm gonna say this a lot. You never give up on them, but here is what I'm asking. Do you trust God enough to give them up? Don't give up, give them up. Do you see the difference? This is loving. I've done all that I can do, and I'll never give up on you, but God, now I trust you. And I give them up to you. So I want to give you a thought as we close today. What toxic tendencies are you putting up with that you know only God can deal with them? What are some boundaries that you can put into place? And then the second thing is maybe you're Jonah. Maybe you're the one running from God and you're running and causing chaos in people's lives. Maybe this is a moment today where you see God's hand of mercy on your life. And there are certain things, I'm telling you, because I've been through it, you can't get from your wife and you can't get from friendships. You can only get from God. And maybe today's your day that you're going to stop running and say, Lord, I surrender to you. So here's what I just want to invite you just to stand up all across this room. Can we do this? I would encourage you not to leave. Let's just take a moment and have this between you and the Lord. I know there's a lot of people and thoughts on your heart. I want to teach you, it's an Anglican prayer of surrender. If you feel comfortable, just take your hands and just kind of cross them like this. This is often a posture of my own will, of saying no to God, of saying, I'm just going to do it. If you ever see somebody that does this, it means I'm not open to what you're talking about. I'm closed. So in a moment when I pray, if you're ready, I just want you to switch it to this right here, just like this, if you're ready. If you're not ready, don't do it. Just stay like this. If there's something that you're like, God, I'm just not ready to give this to you. But if you are, maybe for you, you're recognizing I'm Jonah, and Lord, I'm coming back to you. Maybe you're a follower of Jesus, and you've just been gone for a long time. There's a posture of surrender. Lord, I'm coming back. Maybe for you, you've never had a relationship with the Lord, and today's your day to say, God, I'm giving you my life. And maybe you have someone in your life right now that, well, you've been trying to be God for them, and you need to give them up to the Lord. Not give up, but give them up. So whenever you're ready, Father, I'm going to pray right now. If that posture shifts in your heart, just demonstrate it with your body. Lord, all across this room, we thank you that you are a good God, that you run after us, that you use all things, God, for your good according to those that are called by your purposes that love you. And so, God, I pray right now for those that have been running from you, God, that maybe today's their day. I love that salvation is freely given. And if that's you today and you're Jonah and you're ready to say, I'm ready to give my life to the Lord today, He has found me, I am here, I am ready to surrender with those palms faced up to heaven, Just simply say, Lord, today I give you my life. Thank you, Jesus, for not giving up on me. I believe that you are the Son of God. You resurrected from the grave, and that you, God, are my source of identity. And today I'm inviting you into my life. And Father God, I pray for those that hearts are very heavy, for every enabler in the room who feels like without me they're gonna drown. God, would they have the strength to give them up to you? We love you, Jesus. We invite you into this space. We pray this in your name. Amen. Amen. Man, can we just celebrate those that are coming back to God, maybe giving their life to the Lord for the first